What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. If you've been here before, if you have not been here before, I'm glad that you're here now. Hopefully, you find something that you like. It's basically just me talking about things that I enjoy, things that are way beyond my understanding, and me trying to figure them out. Hopefully, with your help. So, if you could hit the like button for me, and at any point, leave comments in the comment section. Let's actually talk about these things. My whole idea here is to maybe make you think about things that maybe you hadn't thought about before, and also to get feedback from you, because different perspectives on things are really what I love, right? It really helps me to think about things in a different way. So when I started this channel, and this is very new to me, I have other channels, but this one's new. When I started this channel, I knew that it was going to take me on a journey through a bunch of the things that I kind of like to think about, you know, religious things and scientific things and philosophy and stuff. I knew that it was going to do that. It's an opportunity for me to actually dive into those things a little more often than I probably would normally. Because they're actually my favorite things to do, my favorite things to think about and talk about. I love it, honestly. And I have no classic training in it. I never went to school for philosophy or anything. I wish I had. I did take philosophy courses, but anyway, I knew it was going to take me on a journey into that stuff. But it's funny. My past few videos that I've made have kind of been on free will. I'm kind of on this free will kick. And the more I get into it, the more I'm realizing what I never really realized about free will before. And I've thought about free will quite a bit. You know, and I go back and forth with it. I've had my times where I absolutely thought free will was a thing, was real. And I've had my times where I thought free will is actually impossible. But what I maybe didn't realize about it was how deeply it permeates every other big question that there is out there about reality, about existence. There are, with all the different theories out there that there are regarding why we're here, how we're here, who we are, whatever. Every one of them, religion, scientific, you know, theology, whatever. Any one of them has a different effect on the question of free will and whether or not we have it or we don't. And so it's kind of in everything, in every conversation that you have. When you're talking about free will, it's going to bring up all these other possibilities and all these other theories. Well, you know, if you look at it this way, then, you know, this is what it means. If you look at it that way, then maybe that's what it means. And you kind of can't help that. And I never realized that about free will before. I always thought free will was free will. It's in this box. You think about it, you either have it, you don't have it. But I never really acknowledged the relationship that it has with so many other things. I want to take you really quickly to this video, and this is, you know, one of my favorite series. We've done a couple of videos where I've reviewed some of these closer to truth videos, and I'm just going to show you a little section of this one because it speaks about kind of what we're talking about. So let's just watch it real quick. And then I'll let you know about something else pertaining to it. All right, here we go.
Maybe I've pushed philosophy as far as it can go. Maybe I should get back to my original field, the brain. Maybe I should recall what my brain scientist friends have told me.
Certainly consciousness exists, there's no question about it. And I don't know, I'm ambivalent about free will. Right now I don't see how in a physicalist universe free will can really survive. On the other hand, I have this profound feeling of free will.
Since I believe in the physical world, I think that everything is likely grounded in a physical process. My argument is, I don't know what the process is. That is, the process is not limited to the act of you moving your arm. It has to do with the decision to move your arm, and I don't understand the physical process that underlies decision.
So when I'm playing ping pong, I love ping pong, a different part of the brain is dealing with it. It's not that I see the ball coming, decide to do this kind of shot, and then it happens. It's way faster. The information has not got to the perception bit by the time the arm's done it. Now, we tend to tell ourselves these stories that I did it and I hit the ball and so on. What's the I? No, this arm and that system was doing this, and this one was thinking about, oh, I wonder if I'm going to win, and they're all parallel. And I think it is possible more to live your life that way and realise that and drop this sort of idea of a self that has continuity, because it's not there. There's a similarity carrying on, but there's nobody there to tie it together.
Up to 1 second before I make one of these spontaneous movements, there's a build-up across on particular my premotor cortex, which is probably involved. I mean, the electric activity here reflects the activity of the underlying neurons that are responsible for planning and for executing motion. And so in this case, there's a clear sequence of events. 1 second before I move my hand, I can start measuring a potential electrical negativity here. 500 milliseconds into that, I first feel the urge to consciously move. I've just decided spontaneously, me, Christoph, has decided to move. And then 200 milliseconds later, the movement actually occurs. So now what you have is problem that actually my brain seemed to have decided 500 milliseconds before me, before Christoph, to move my hand and to flex my hand. And it turns out, sort of, it sent me a carbon copy, the conscious me, and then I think I'm actually responsible for it. Well, in fact, my brain is responsible for it. So here we have a problem, because the free will seems to come half a second after something in my brain has already decided to flex my wrist.
On this view.
Okay, something that I've noticed with a lot of these clips, and actually with a lot of the different videos that I watch on these subjects, is that dualism, what they call dualism, plays kind of a major role. You almost can't deny it, and a lot of people do deny dualism. And dualism, for anybody who might not know, is this idea of not only the conscious I, but something else, something like just what it says, dualism, like two separate pieces, if not more, that make up what is you. And some people call that brain and mind, and make a differentiation that way. Some people say the soul and the physical bodies. You know, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. But I always notice that these scientists, these philosophers, whatever they are, they very often refer to, well, I said to myself, or, you know, like Christoph was just saying, my brain does something before I, Christoph, even know that I'm going to do it. And we do it ourselves, right? We have a conversation with ourselves. We might argue with ourselves. We might know that we need to do something, but we do something else. And we say it to ourselves all the time. Oh, so I said to myself, I thought to myself, how do I think to myself? So that's kind of the dualism. Why do I bring that up? It's actually not going to, it actually doesn't mean anything right now, but with something that I'm going to be getting to, that's actually going to play a part. So I kind of wanted to point it out. All right, let's go on and just finish this little bit here.
There can't be free will in the traditional sense. I mean, free will is all bound up with self. Free will, as most people would have it, is something like I can, for no reason at all, not because of, you know, things in my brain or anything else, choose what I want, and it's my responsibility. That can't be so when you see how the brain works and how all the information flows through the brain and so on. So let's give up on it.
The fact that I believe something is answerable scientifically doesn't mean that I already have the mechanism to answer the question. If I knew how to answer it today, I would.
At least he's honest about it.
Some physicists think it may be possible by using very esoteric aspects of things like quantum mechanics, that you can have free will that free will is essentially free to throw that you have physics which gives you the probability of a certain event happening. Like say event A happens 50% of the time, event B happens 50% of the time. But that actually what happens on this particular trial right now, that's indeterminate according to quantum mechanics, but maybe the mental or the spirit, or however you want to call it, can influence that choice and make the choice for you on this particular trial is subject to the probabilities that are given by physics.
I'm confused there. How do we get a mental spirit thing in here?
Okay, the idea of these models would be that there's a physical world, okay, the material world that we all know, and then there's a mental world.
How can you have free will without being a dualist?
I mean, almost by definition, if you're not a dualist and you think physicalism is all there is, there's only force fields and matter and energy, of course, then there's no free will.
But a lot of people who believe in purely physicalism, materialism, and eliminative materialism, where there's even no really try to create a free will. I mean,
I think this is a metaphysical question. I'm not sure this is a scientific question. I think this is a metaphysical question, and so I can make metaphysical statement just as well as any other philosopher can. My claim would be, if you're not a dualist, I do not see where free will could come from, because there's nothing else except blind chance and necessity. So I think if you do believe in some version of free will, you have to believe there's something outside the mere physical, that physical isn't everything. Or you say, well, there's two types of stuff. There's a physical, and then there is some sort of mental thing, call it information, you call it dual aspect of information, call it something else, but there's something else above and beyond the mere physical brain.
Christoph, let me go here. Christoph brings up a great point, and it's a point that I find a lot of these scientists, or whatever they are, they don't want to go there. He says that in order to think about free will and to consider that it could even possibly be, you have to accept that there is something other than just the brain, something else, something outside of the physical, basically is what he's saying. And Robert asked him, I mean, where did this, what are you talking about, right? He almost came out and said like a soul or whatever. It's kind of like what he was getting at. I think he didn't want to definitely define it or put it in any kind of particular box. It's just this thing that is outside of the brain, outside of the physical, outside of what we can kind of see and measure or whatever, that you have to include when you were talking about this. Most scientists won't go there. If you cannot demonstrate it, if you can't see it, if you can't test it some way, it doesn't exist, or it's not real, or they at the very least will not include it into their just into the soup. You know what I mean? They won't put it in there when they're trying to figure out how to make this and how to get it, how to understand it, how to make it make sense. They won't include those things if it's not something that can actually be demonstrated scientifically. This is just me. I figure, these people, these men and women, they go to school for an awful long time. They probably pay an awful lot of money and go through a lot of work to get the degrees that they have in whatever scientific field that they're in. And so after going through all that, the last thing you want is to consider that the answers to the questions that your field is trying to find cannot be found within your field. Matter of fact, can't be found anywhere. You'll never find them because they're outside of the physical. They're outside of what science can actually demonstrate or even find, right? They don't want to admit that. And so when I hear somebody like Christoph say, listen, when you reduce it down to what it is, almost like what was it? I forget the name. I can't think. Oh, Sherlock. I think was it Sherlock Holmes that said something to the effect of, when you eliminate all of the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, it's gotta be the truth. And that's kind of where Christoph is going. Like, you can't explain this any other way. We've tried. And so there's got to be something outside of it all that potentially you have to add to the mix to kind of come up with these answers. I believe that that's true. Can I prove it? No, right? But I believe that that is true. There was maybe a year and a half ago, there was an article that I wrote on the Medium platform, if you're familiar with it. And it was a theory that I had. Call it, Trev's theory of everything. There are a bunch of theories, and this was nothing new. I didn't come up with anything that was like a brand new theory that nobody ever thought of. What I did was I looked at a bunch of the different theories of reality, theories of, the universe and consciousness and why we're here, theories like that. I looked at a bunch of these different theories and I thought to myself, well, they've all got good things about them, all got bad things about them. What I mean by that is things that could actually be, that really make sense. But then there are some other things that are like, you're really trying to jam a square peg into a round hole there. That's a bit much, right? So each one of these different theories, and I'm, listen, religious theories, scientific theories, philosophical theories, metaphysical theories, whatever. All of these different theories contain that. They all have the good stuff and the bad stuff. Well, what I started doing, what I did in this article, was I took a bunch of the pieces of all of these different theories that could be, that actually made sense. And when I started combining them, I started coming up with kind of its own thing, right? That I don't know that anybody's ever really put all this stuff together like this before. Maybe they didn't because it's crazy. Maybe I'm nuts. But I don't think so. And this is where I either lose you or you get, you're really like, what is this guy talking about? Because, I'm either nuts or I'm actually onto something. We'll find out. This is where I need your help. So I'm going to link the article down in the description. And I want you to read it. It's free. Even if you don't have a Medium account, you can read it. And you don't even have to be a good reader. You could be a crappy reader and read this thing in like a half an hour. Or there's actually a play button in Medium where we'll read it to you. But I want you to read this thing that I came up with. And when I wrote it, it was fun. It was just about fun. That's all it was. I try to be comical. I try to, it's a fun read. But what I'm finding as I'm still researching these things, as I'm still on this quest for knowledge of what reality is, and, is free will real? Is it not real? What is consciousness? All these different things. As I'm on this quest and I'm reading these things, it keeps bringing me back to this article. And some of the things and conclusions that I came up with and some of the pieces that I puzzled together honestly start to make more and more sense. And this is my way of doing a peer review kind of thing. I want you to tell me what about it doesn't make sense. I want to talk about it. So this video that we're making right now is going to have another part to it. In between, if you can read that, go ahead and read it. That would be awesome. And if you read it and it fascinates you and you think there's something to it, come back for the next part of this, okay? And I'll leave you with this other little piece. Now, there is a scientist by the name of Robert Lanza. You may have heard of him, you may not have heard of him. He has a theory that he calls biocentrism. He has written several books on this theory, as a matter of fact. And not a lot of scientists take him seriously. And I find it weird because when I listen to a lot of these guys talk, what they're saying is very much in line with this theory of biocentrism. So I'm not sure what it is about maybe Robert Lanza himself that just rubs them the wrong way or whatever. But it doesn't matter to me that other scientists maybe want to buy into this theory or just kind of crap all over it or whatever, because very many of the theories that we now go with that are just kind of the doctrine, when they originally came out, the people that came out with them, they were thought to be nuts. They were thought to be crazy. Until some time went on, and as we reduced things down and got rid of some of the things that actually there's no way it could be true, we kind of got left with a lot of these theories, and then we thought, well, maybe they, obviously they were onto something. So I think the same thing about Robert Lanza, and this idea of biocentrism to him is that consciousness is fundamental to everything. I mean, fundamental to life, to existence, to reality, to the universe, to everything that we know. Consciousness is the creative, fundamental force of all of it. And if you're hearing that for the first time, that might sound a bit much to you. It might sound outlandish. But haven't we heard that before? Haven't we heard that before when we think of religion? Haven't we heard that before when we think of God? And again, I admittedly know a lot more about the Christian religion than I do a lot of other religions. And so when I think about in the Christian religion how God is said to be outside of time. In other words, time doesn't even exist as far as God is concerned. You can't say that God was or God will be. God simply is. There never was a time, nor will there ever be a time that God is not. Time is a construct that we use to get through our life, right? It's kind of how we make sense of things. But time is an illusion or a function of this reality, but it's not actually a realism of the real world or realm or whatever that God inhabits. Okay, God is also said to be all-powerful. There is nothing that we could think of that God isn't capable of doing. Now, some people have come up with the argument, oh yeah, well, can God make 3 + 3 = 7, right? They think that those laws are stronger than God, and there's an argument to be made for that, but that's a whole nother video, right? I'm just saying the lore of God, these are the things that people have believed for, thousands and thousands of years, okay? So if we're able to believe that, even though we can't necessarily internalize or really understand a timeless existence, we do have the ability, the capacity to say, this isn't something that I necessarily understand or that I can even contemplate how it works, but it must be true. But it must be real. I don't have the kind of brain that can interpret it, but it must be true because this is what God is, right? We've got the ability to do that. Well, Robert Lanza replaces God in all that with consciousness. Says that consciousness is the unmoved first mover. That consciousness is the uncaused cause. That consciousness does not exist in time. It's not like it ever started or will ever end. It simply is. That is the reality of the world. And consciousness is not only fundamental, but this is how it works. We, as conscious beings, create everything around us through our consciousness, right? It's not that far-fetched. I'm talking to you over a computer right now, and you're seeing my face and you're hearing my voice, and there are actually ways that we can, over our phones or our computers, we can actually talk to each other live, see each other, right? I'm old enough to remember when I was a child, that not being the case. The only place that existed was on the cartoon The Jetsons. I used to watch all the time that show when I was a little kid, and they would get on their visiphone and they would talk to everybody just like I'm talking to you now. But it wasn't actually something that was real. It was science fiction. I watched Star Trek forever, right? And they would get on their little flip phones and they would talk to each other over great distances. Okay? Wireless all that. That wasn't something that existed when I was a kid. I was still picking up the receiver and dialing, right? But these things were rooted in actual scientific theory of the time. Not scientific reality yet, but scientific theory. And we thought about them, and then eventually they came to fruition. Now, all those things that were sci-fi, right, that we never even could, that, wow, that would be awesome one day. Well, a lot of it's already here. So maybe there's something to be said for it. Maybe there's something to be said for everything that we have, the car that we drive, the fuel that goes in it, again, the computers that we're on, so many things we could point to. We have them because first we thought about them, and then that thought came to fruition and became reality. Kind of speaks a little bit to quantum mechanics almost, in the wave function. How the wave function exists as a wave of possibility. It doesn't really exist in the physical world yet, but once it's observed by consciousness, right, it collapses and becomes something in the physical world, becomes something in reality that we can actually observe. But it takes consciousness to do that. Now, yeah, I know that, like the double slit experiment and stuff like that, they set up a recorder, they set up a camera or whatever. But before we knew what was on that camera, we don't know what was on it until a conscious person observed that camera, right? So even the camera could have been a wave function. It was a possibility. Anything could have been on that camera. Could have been a wave, could have been a line pattern, could have been whatever, right? And for those of you who are familiar with that, it's a Schrodinger's cat, right? So even observing the camera took a consciousness to see what the results were. So it's not that far-fetched. Why do I bring that up? Well, again, it goes to this theory that I have. And if this theory has anything to it, if there's any reality or any little piece of it that can be tweaked and maybe built upon, it could also explain this whole thing about free will. That part of it isn't necessarily in the article that I wrote, because this is part of what I've been thinking about. There could be a part 2 to that article, because I can build on it now. It was a good foundation, that article, and I really, really want you to read it. But from there, a lot of other things can be explained if the theory itself can be adopted. I'm going to leave you there. This was long enough. There will be another part of this video, and maybe we'll get into a little bit more. I hope that some of you read that article and come back here and comment on it so that I know you've read it. And then it will make sense to go on and kind of talk about the rest of what I want to talk about. All right. Thank you very much for dealing with me this long. Again, please hit the like button. If you're not subscribed to the channel, subscribe. Share this all over the place. I think this could be fun, this channel, and I think that maybe we can get into some fun conversations. All right, y'all. Talk to you soon. Bye.